Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. We're still in January of 2025 and this is my second video for the year, so hopefully the trend will continue. So today I am doing a makeover on this king size model. It's a 12B, came out in 1969 when I was 7 years old. And it's called the Scammell crane truck. Underneath it actually says mobile crane, but it's known as the Scammell crane truck. So once again, it's a little bit shabby and I don't like shabby things. So I'd like to trick this up and try and make it look like a new model. Underneath you can see it says, as I said before, mobile crane, king size K12. And just there somewhere it says 1969. At the front under the base it says Scammell, made in England. So having a quick look around this before I start, I am looking to see what sort of issues I'm going to have, and one will be to make these tyres stay on properly after I've taken them off and worked with them and put them back on again. Could be a little bit difficult, has been in the past. Somebody, probably the previous owner, who knows, has coloured in these rear vision windows on the cab with either a black texture or some black paint, and they've also painted the radiator grille, I guess it is, on the back of the engine compartment for the crane. And quite oddly, I thought this was a hole in the top there for an exhaust stack that was maybe missing, but on closer inspection it's actually a circular hole that someone's painted on there or drawn on there with a texture. So the main crane piece, the jib I suppose you'd call it, someone will probably correct me on that, is held up and down by one of these Hydro sleeve rams that Matchbox use in a lot of their industrial type models. And it has a non-genuine hook on the end of it. So I'm going to have to pull this cabin apart to paint it. I need to take the green transparency out as well. Having a look at the front here, it looks like the front headlights and the bumper bar are all part of the undercarriage on the front here, that nice checker plate looking section, which is riveted onto the model. Also the swivel cab on the back there is riveted on. So this is going to be quite a challenge, I can see it now. It's a big model with a lot of parts. All the tyres come off, that's probably the easiest bit of the build. Having a look here, I just noticed that those rusty plates underneath are actually sprung steel and give the illusion of some suspension there to enhance its look when you're playing with it, pushing it along the ground and lifting loads. You can simulate the compression of the springs as the crane lifts up, I suppose. Or just pushing it over the carpet helps it glide along a little bit easier. So I'm going to take off the front section here so that I can get the windscreen and seating out before I paint strip and paint the model. It's giving me a little bit of grief. I think I need to invest in a new drill set because they don't seem to be working particularly well. So I have another shot with a different drill. Still didn't really take out much metal. I don't really want to go too deep in case I make that hole big and I can't put it back together again. So I just figure enough's enough. I'll try and pry it apart using flat bladed screwdriver. There we go, not too much effort, but it came free. That's good. It means I can probably push it back together and there will still be some resistance in that hole and peg there underneath that holds it together. There's another close-up of that sprung steel bit rusty. And this is what I wanted to get to, the windscreen and this little seating area for two-seater and a large centre console there. Nice steering wheel. That's one of those plastic interiors that can flip open at the front. So during assembly it's a little bit easier to make in an injection moulding process, I suppose, and then they fold it up in the factory before they put it in the cabin. Now, separating the rear swivel cab, whatever you call it, the crane driver's cab, proved to be a bit of a challenge. There's a few little tricks up Matchbox sleeve. How they've put this together I'm not too sure, and in which order. It's always challenging to try and work that out so that when you're putting it back together again you don't handicap yourself in any way. Now, this rivet here is just free to move in there, so I'm probably going to have to replace that, possibly with a pot rivet, I'm guessing at this stage, or maybe a screw. No, I haven't decided yet. But I've got to get this plate off so I can get the windscreen out. Obviously I can't paint strip or paint this with the windscreen in, because the windscreen will get wrecked. So I'm just trying to take the base off here by removing the minimum amount of metal off of these rivets to give me a fighting chance of getting it back on and secured. Okay, fair bit of metal there removed. Let's see whether this will fall apart. That rivet there wasn't particularly well centered. My fault. So I've taken a little bit of the base off, which thankfully you won't be able to see when it's back together. I pried open the base from the body and scratched it. I actually don't remember how I did that, but I'll have to try and cover that up later. So that came off pretty easy, and I'm dreading putting it back together. And I'm looking at that ram, the hydro sleeve as Matchbox called them, and it looks like that has to go in before the base goes on. So let's hope I don't forget that when the time comes. I'm just pulling it out now. It's quite a tight fit in there. Obviously this model is, what, 59 years old, and it's all stayed together quite well. So Matchbox were experts at making these, or designing these little models in such a way that they were almost impossible for kids to pull apart, and they have certainly stood the test of time, this one included. Now that green windscreen should in theory just drop out if I bang it hard enough. It's well wedged in there. There we go. That's it, it's come loose. And you can see it's a little bit faded. Just normal wear and tear on there. I'll give that a polish before I put it back in. I was going to take this off, but I thought that's just giving me extra work to do. And believe me, there's plenty of work in this little model as it is. So I'm going to leave that on and hopefully airbrush around it and in it. And should look okay. That's a little bit bent, I noticed. Only at this stage now I noticed it. So take the opportunity. I've got the screwdriver in my hands. I thought I might just try and leave that out and pray, of course, that it doesn't snap. Very, very strong alloy these models are made out of. I managed to straighten it up enough that I would have to say I'm happy with that. And I did the other side as well there, just to make sure it was straight in all directions. Now, to get this little stub of the old rivet out, I'm using this spring-loaded center punch, which is great because you just push it in and bang. It's like hitting it with a hammer and a nail. It pops straight out. Can't see that I'm going to be reusing that. I have no idea how Matchbox put that together and formed it as they did. This was slightly bent, and I straightened that up. Yeah, there I go. A bit annoyed about that scratch. Thankfully it's underneath. Taking the wheels off, I want to reuse the axles and the wheels, so I'm extremely careful here, trying to grind off the little mushroom head on the end of the axle so I can remove these hubs. For some reason they defy gravity when you're trying to do this. They rise up towards the grindstone. You have to be very careful. Try and hold them back with the tip of your finger whilst you're working to prevent them from getting damaged. See, that one moved, and even though I was holding it. Just got to make sure I don't hit my finger too, because working in close proximity to these spinning, grinding things, you can end up injuring yourself. But I think I got away with it today, and that's a nice tight fit, that one. That's as much as you want to take off, because when you're going to put it back together, it's going to be easier to secure the wheel on there, because there's a little bit of meat on the end of the axle to use to mushroom over again. I'll just put all these in these little shot glasses I've got. By the way, these shot glasses, I've got hundreds of them. I had them from 2019. A guy called Terry Kidd sent them to me once, a big box of them. He's from Dayton in Ohio, so I hope Terry is still around. And if you are, hi Terry, and thanks for the shot glasses. I'm still using them. So there's all the bits ready to be paint stripped. Not going to pull it apart any more than I already have. There's a few bits here. I'd like to count them all up, but I can't be bothered. It must be a lot. 20? The interior seating area there I just coated with a light dust over of matte white export, Australian export, cheapest paint you can buy. I think it's like $5 a can. And it's great for this hobby. For things like that. I'm trying to duplicate the original colour. This is incredibly sun bleached, as you can tell from the pink wheel hubs that are supposed to be red, and the almost white yellow here of the cab where it's been sitting in the sun on some kid's bedroom windowsill, no doubt, for many years. So I'm going to try and make up some paint similar to the original paint and make it work. Now when I've done it, I'm going to store it in this little container that at first I thought it was a magic trick. It's impossible to take the lid off, and then I noticed it just says on the white on white, so it's not very noticeable, to push down and turn. So I managed to get that open, and that's what I'm going to use. And here's some of Terry's shot glasses again. So I'm going to use the Tamiya paints here, the red and the yellow. Make up this very light orange, as you can see underneath where the sun hasn't got to it. Where that checker plate base was, there's been no change in the colour of the paint, I'm guessing, since it was new. I don't seem to have a lot of this yellow. I think I got another one on the shelf, but I'm not sure. Hopefully there's enough to go around, because that one's empty. And I don't want to drive into town just to get one pot of yellow. This Tamiya red paint is extremely strong colour. And one drop will make all the difference. These little sticks I got, I only had like 100 of them. I break them in half, and now I've got 200. Give it a mix, you can see it goes very, very orangey. It's difficult to know. When I'm filming this, I use an LED light, and it's been remarked upon in the past that it actually gives a sort of a yellow light rather than pure white. And I think it may be affecting the appearance of this paint, the colour of this paint. I don't think it's quite orangey enough, so I put in one more drop. So that's 2 drops of red now with just that half pot of yellow. And it changes quite dramatically. It looks very orange in the pot, but when you put it on the model, it kind of looks more yellowy. So a bit of an optical illusion there. I don't know if it's the camera or the lighting or what, but at the time I thought that looks a perfect match. So that is what I'm going with. Later on you'll see that it's actually quite a little bit darker. It dries darker than that. Maybe the red comes through after it dries and affects the finished colour. But nonetheless, it'll look brand new and will be a worthy addition to my collection. Haven't really got that many king size models. I generally do the Matchbox regular wheels, the smaller ones back in the 60s. But it's nice to mix it up a little bit and occasionally have a king size build, and this one is a king sized video. I think it goes for quite a while. I hope you stick around and see the finished product. If you wish to, feel free to skip to the end. So I've made up my paint, I've put it in that little bottle to keep it fresh, I've stuck it up there so I know where it is when the time comes. It doesn't look like there's a lot there, I hope there's enough to go around. You can see the colours changing on that paint already. Now I was going to dunk this into the paint stripper next. Now this is the stuff I usually use, and it's highly toxic and cancerous, and I'm trying to experiment with other things. I haven't done a makeover for such a long time, and I'm using a different type of paint stripper on this one. I'm not too sure if I've used it before or not. I think maybe I did. But I've just noticed that the windscreen is still in this vehicle, and luckily I noticed, because if I'd put that in the paint stripper it would probably have spoilt it and I would not have been able to source another one, I'm sure. So luckily I spotted it, and I'm going to have to drill that rivet out to get it out, and I'll use this shallow cut drill so that I don't drill through the roof of the cab. That's the theory anyway. So I just modified that drill on my grindstone in the garage and adjusted the profile accordingly. Now I need a drill. Now the drill was borrowed. I know you think I was using it 5 minutes ago, but this video was filmed over a couple of days and the drill has disappeared. So it's out of the hobby room and over to the shed to get the drill. Wow, it's hot, 30 degrees I think at least. Wish I hadn't built the shed so far away from the house. Oh, there's Finn. Thinks it's time to play. There's Ziggy. There's Ziggy. It's too hot. I see the drill. That's what I wanted. Excellent. Alright, 3 bars. That's good. Alright, let's go back. You coming, Finn? Go on then. What a beautiful day. That sky.
to the house.
So I'm back in the hobby room finally with the drill, and I can get this windscreen out with my shallow cut drill, which is noticeable because I put some blue heat shrink on it so it stands out in my box of drills. Normally it works really well. For some reason today it was continuously wandering, and I think the rivet that holds it in was not as concave as they normally are. Well, struggle as I might, I did get it out, but unfortunately it's not a clean separation. It's rather Raggedy Ann, to say the least. So thankfully when it's back in the truck, no one will be able to see that trashed top of it where I sort of stuffed it up as I was drilling it out. So I'm going to have to repair that with some araldite just to strengthen it before I put it back in. That's my plan. This is a nice stiff bristled brush, and I'm going to use it to agitate the paint stripper on this model to speed up the paint removal process. Now this is that new paint stripper. It's not the dangerous one. It's a non-dangerous one, and there's a reason for that. Because it appears to have no active ingredients in it. It does not do a thing when you're trying to strip this paint off these metal toys. I'm just leaving it for a while there, and I come back. And even though I've got this stiff bristled brush to assist in the removal of the paint, nothing is coming off. There's not even a yellow stain on the bristles of the brush. It definitely says there paint stripper, and I think the key is it's a domestic formula. I'm showing you how weak it is. It hasn't even removed that, which I think is a texture mark on the back of that counterweight there area. Hasn't even touched it. In fact, not any paint has come off at all as a result of using that paint stripper. So I do not recommend it for this hobby. So instead, I am drawn back to my old favourite, the quick strip poly stripper. It used to be called poly stripper paint stripper. It's the same stuff, I'm sure. It's in a different can. Smells the same. Got all the same warnings on it. You just have to be careful you don't get it on your skin or in your eyes, and don't breathe in the fumes, and you'll be right. But it's very, very effective, and it's what you need for this hobby. You don't want to be sitting around for days waiting for the paint to come off. You want it to happen within minutes, and that's what this stuff does. Now have a look at the difference. This stuff is incredible. I don't know how it works, but it seems to get under the paint, and the paint just lifts off in huge chunks. It's very satisfying when you get a large section that's been cooking for a little bit, and you can just push the paint off with the brush. The black is putting up a little bit of a fight there. But really, literally 5 minutes, and there's no paint left on this model. I don't often use this hobby sink. It's in my hobby room, but it's in the corner. Sometimes a little bit difficult to get to if there's stuff in the way. But I'm using it today. Right, I'm going to reinforce the broken windscreen. I've just put some black insulation tape on top of the hole. I'm going to fill the hole up with a little bit of this araldite. 5-minute Araldite, best thing ever. And I do love these dispensing tubes where you push down on the syringe like plunger, and the hardener and the resin come out 50-50, which is the correct ratio to mix it up and make it work. I've tried some of the cheaper ones from the $2 shop. You can't beat the Araldite in my opinion. And Araldite, if you're watching, please send me some tubes and I will give you a shout out. A little bit goes a long way. So I probably dispensed 5 times as much as I needed. I'm trying to get it just on the top only so that it's not visible when it's refitted in the truck. I'm going to leave it sitting there for 5 minutes, well 10 minutes, well probably actually a couple of days before I put it back in. And rest assured it will be cured by the time that goes in. In there it says K12, look, king size 12, in case somebody on the production line gets confused. Paint stripper did a really good job of the framework there. Got in all nooks and crevices and completely stripped the paint off this model, so it's perfect for ready for undercoating and repainting. Couple of little bits there around the seam of the box behind the cabin there and the door frame. I'll just get a little pin in there and scrape that out. Details there, grill, number plate, front there actually says Scammell in tiny microscopic raised lettering, which is amazing. Look at how free flowing must this alloy be when they put it in a tiny mold with those letters embossed in it. It's amazing. Number plate there, SWR259G. I wonder if you can look that up on a historical database of UK number plates. Nice toolbox at the back there. I think it's got a padlock on it. I can't quite make that out. It's got twin fuel tanks on the side and a few sort of marker lights, I guess, on the back. Maybe those are rams that come down, see, underneath to steady the truck when it's like lifting loads to the side, etc. More checker plate finish on the top there, which I like. I've painted this black. I'll actually give it 3 or 4 coats before I put it back together, and that scratch disappears. I don't know why I didn't fill it or sand it down. I just reached that point where I kept painting it until the scratch disappeared. Because I could. Something different. Trying to work out how to put this back together. Tamiya Fine Surface Primer is one of my favourite products. It goes on so finely. Doesn't obscure any of the details. Dries quickly and is a fantastic matte base colour grey, light grey. That sort of, you can paint any colour onto it and the colour just pops. It's brilliant stuff. Quite expensive for what it is. Not much in a can either, I don't think, because I seem to go through a few of them. So once again, as you're familiar with my makeovers, which you probably are if you're watching, I'm using those spring-loaded or locking I used to call them forceps. Apparently they're called hemostats. Forceps are different things. They're great for holding models, and in conjunction with those magnetic clamps, they're a must-have in the spray booth, because you're not touching the model at all when you're spraying it or when you're placing it up to dry. Lovely jubbly. Now this model is particularly heavy because it's a king size, and one clamp struggles to hold it. That's why I had a bit of trouble there. I end up using 3 to make sure it didn't fall off, and I'd have to repaint it again. Up like that. Sometimes the hemostats let go. Oh! If you don't pay attention when you first attach them. That rusty bit of metal, I give it a quick dust over with some silver grey paint after I have rubbed the rust down with some fine emery paper. I'm looking in the encyclopedia of Matchbox models here just to see what the finished product should look like. Specifically in relation to the decals on the side. And it looks like the previous owner painted that bumper bar black. So I've cleaned that off too. And I'm just cleaning up the detail there where it's got sort of scuff marks with this very thin file. This one in particular is handy. It's like a square section, so you can use the corners of the square for getting in little fine grooves. Like, well, it's perfect for this application really. Just cleaning up the grooves in the front bumper bar. Obviously any lumps or bumps or grazes on there will be visible after it's painted because the paint's so thin. So that's the idea. There we go, the silver grey silver. That's another one of those Australian export cans, which is, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's cheap as chips, but it's great stuff. Lovely coverage. I had to buy some bits for this model from Recover Toy, company that sells replica parts for Matchbox cars. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I do use them quite a bit. They do have a very large range of spare parts. So here you can see an original replica of what it should look like compared with the one that was in there. The one that was in there has probably been sourced from another model, I'm guessing. These decals that they sent me are not decals, they're stickers. I'm hoping that the colour's going to match. If not, I might be in a bit of strife. One of the things that are overlooked and very time consuming are the tyres and wheels and axles. Today there are loads and loads of little bits here. There's eight hubs, 8 tyres, 4 axles, and you don't really think much about it, but they take forever to clean and to look good. There I'm showing you that the wheels are sun bleached on one side and quite original looking on the other. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm just making up a little pot of detergent and hot water just to clean those wheels and tyres. And then I can give them a bit of TLC and try and make them look new. They're that small and my fingers are that fat. I have to use toothpicks to help me handle them when I'm cleaning them. And this is why this hobby takes so much time. If you go into it in great detail, there is so much to do, like trying to get the grime out of those grooves on the tyres. It doesn't take, a minute. It takes half an hour. It does when I do it anyway. Tamiya clear is always good to spruce them up as well. It takes out any minor scuffs and just makes them look like they've come straight out of the injection moulding process. Same with the tyres. I used to think it was cheating, but it's not. The end result is what you're after. Well, that's what I'm after, a nice display piece. I mean, you could sit there and polish these tyres and keep them 100% original. But I am a fan of just giving them a quick dust over with the Tamiya gloss varnish because they look so good when they're on the shelf. Here's just another quick look at the details in this cabin. They're quite amazing, really. A very complicated model. Lots and lots going on there. You can't imagine how long it would have taken to make the mould. Still baffles me how Matchbox managed to do what they did. What I'm doing here is I'm going to paint the jib with a brush, because I'm sure that if I hit it with the spray gun, there will be areas that get missed. And at the end of the day, there will be an uneven coverage. And sometimes, you might concentrate on trying to get spray into a gap or a corner, and then you put too much on and it starts to run. So my theory is if I give them a paint, if I paint them with a paintbrush first, and then when I spray it, I can spray that as well, and it will have the same texture as the rest of the model, and it will look like it's all been sprayed right from the beginning. Just showing you the base there of the crane cabin, how I saturated it with black paint to hide that cut, that scratch, but the thing is you're not going to see it anyway. I'm kind of going a little bit over the top, really. Just experimenting here, reminding myself that the headlights go in first and then the back clips down over that rivet post. So to hold that in place, as I've done in the past, I'm going to be using a small Allen screw, button-headed Allen screw like these. And to do that, I have to drill a hole and tap it, and then put it in with this tiny little Allen key on this sort of, it's like a hand drill chuck, really. And it's only just going to work, and there is a possibility that it could actually pop through that hole if I tighten it up too much. So I do have a backup plan, and hopefully I won't need it, but I've got these tiny washers in a tray on my spare parts section that I can use if the head of the screw is in fact too small for the hole. So after drilling through the post, I then tap it. I've got a little bit of mineral oil there just to act as a lubricant for the cutting tool. The cutting tool is called a tap. If you're looking for them online, you might want to buy a tap. You'll probably get pictures of faucets, but you'll also get pictures of these little thread cutting tools. You really can't do without them if you're doing this hobby. It's a nice close-up of the cut thread in that hole. It looks very clean. and I always do a test fit with the screw to make sure that the hole is deep enough so the screw can go all the way to the end of the post so that the base is clamped on nice and firmly. Always a nervous moment for me, the painting of a model, because you can have good days and you can have bad days, and it's impossible to know what kind of day you're going to have. So right off the bat there, the needle of the spray gun wasn't locked in, so when I pulled back on the trigger, no paint flowed. Now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that's not a bad colour. It actually looks quite nice and yellowy. A hint of orange, which is what I was aiming for. Overall, lovely coverage and a beautiful colour. At this stage, my wife Julie came in and said, "Oh, I love the colour." To clean these up and get those minor scuff and like foggy look out of them, I'm going to use some cotton buds and a little bit of, I think it's aluminium metal polish I use. It's in a tube, you'll see it in a second. There you can see quite dramatically where the window frame was shielding that plastic from weathering. You can see the difference between where it has and hasn't been weathered. So this takes not that long, 5 minutes maybe, of polishing and repeating and polishing and repeating. And you end up with transparency that looks 95% new. You can't really get them, I can't get them 100% looking brand new, but they come up pretty good. And I do have another trick up my sleeve as well to finish them off. This is a bit annoying though, because it's got those black areas that have been painted in with I think it's a black marker pen. And I actually had to get some very fine grit, 1200 grit emery paper, and sand the black off of the window, because there was no other chemicals that I experimented with that would remove it. And that was very time consuming and annoying to have to do that. But I'm glad I did. The green, especially the green windscreen, came up absolutely beautiful, really, compared to what it was. So this is my secret ingredient, the self-polishing floor polish. And it's important you don't shake this, because if you do, you can get like froth in it. And when you plunge these transparencies into the froth, and when you withdraw them, you have like bubbles on them. And when they dry, they look absolutely shocking. So very important to shake off any excess and keep them dust free whilst they dry. And what happens when they dry is the self-shining floor polish sort of sets up and has a beautiful sort of gloss finish over these transparencies. I mean, you could probably spray them with some varnish if you had some. This is something I've done for a number of years now, and I'm quite pleased with the results, so I continue to do it. That one there was a bit annoying. It fell over on the tissue paper there in the onion saver. I just put that like that to keep the dust off. It only takes 10 minutes to dry, and then they're ready to use. So I'm using a little bit of silicone here to put them back in. Only need a little dribble of it. That's probably too much. It comes out pretty quick. And I like to think if somebody in the future pulls this apart to replace maybe the windscreen, then I won't have hindered them unnecessarily, but because I've used that silicone, it should be quite easy just to pop the old windscreen out. Very important you don't put too much in there though, because when you push down on it, it can squeegee out and ruin all your hard work. Just put the smallest amount in there. And using tweezers, I'll try to get this in. And this is amazing, such a close tolerance fit, this transparency in that metal hole. It's amazing how close it is. It has to go in perfectly vertical. And there's a piece of metal on the inside that I hadn't noticed before that ensures that it's in perfect alignment. Can you see that there? That metal prevents the windscreen from rotating backwards. And not only that, on the base here there's another piece of metal that they've manufactured deliberately to bear down on that windscreen, the edge of that windscreen, to make sure it's fully seated in the cabin during assembly. And just a really amazing, you know, just thinking outside the box what these Matchbox designers were doing just to improve the products. And ordinarily no one would know those bits existed unless you worked in the factory. But they're there, and they're there for a reason. So when I put this base back on, I've done this before, I use a little bit of runny araldite. Make sure it's runny, so don't leave it sitting there going off. It has to be real runny. And you place it below the posts, or when the model is assembled, you want it at the bottom of the posts. And then when it's assembled, you turn the model to the correct orientation. And because you've got 5 minutes before the araldite sets up, it has a chance to run down the rivet stems, or for whatever you want to call them, and then the araldite bonds to the back of the base plate, and it's invisible from the outside, but you know it's doing its job on the inside because you can't get the base off, or the base doesn't fall off, I should say. Now I did forget to put that ram in, so I hastily had to pull it apart and put that ram in because you can't get it in otherwise. So that was a little bit of panic there. Now I can start to see the end in sight. Everything's painted, windscreens are in, the steering wheel and seats have been put back in. I just got to get these wheels on without damaging the model. And again, this is a heart in your mouth moment where anything can go wrong. You just have to think as you're going and try and pick up where something might get damaged before it happens. Here I've got a vice-like grip on those pliers because I've had doing this before, and the whole thing's fallen on the ground and got damaged, the wheels come off, gone under the bench, got lost, etc. But this worked out well. It worked, there you go, I just dropped it. But honestly, I couldn't do a better job than what I've done here today with those axle ends. They look really good and professionally formed. That was using my axle reforming system, which I developed over a few years because I struggled getting the wheels back on. Basically, it uses 2 hole punches end to end and in a drill press to give a little bit of force to peen the end over. It works quite well. To put the crane cabin back on, I'm using a longish pot rivet, and I am trying my best not to damage this model, and it's not easy. As you may know, using a pot rivet gun by hand, it's quite brutal when it detaches, and anything can happen. But that didn't work. So I'm going to have to go again, and this time I'm going to use a longer rivet. It took me many attempts, because my pot rivet gun is an old gun and it's a little bit worn out. I really should invest in a new one. But eventually I got it to work, and there was minimal damage to the crane. There's always some kind of damage. In fact, I commented at the time I did it to a relative. I said, I have no idea how Matchbox put these things together without damaging them, because there's so many areas to stuff up. It's just a miracle, really. They must have had a group of people doing touch-ups on them, surely. Like at the end of the assembly line, they must have had quality control that would do like touch-ups on damaged models, because I've never seen a model with a touch-up. Then again, I've never looked. But yeah, very, very fiddly, especially me and my fat fingers. I've got no specialist equipment, no jigs or anything to hold the thing in. And I'm doing 1 rather than 100 a day, so bear with me. These stickers on the side look completely different to the ones I got from Recovered Toy, and by completely different, I'm talking about the colour of the yellow. I thought that my yellow was quite accurate to the yellow that was underneath that had been un-sun effect, but apparently you would think that Recovered Toy making the stickers would have the correct yellow, and they probably do for a faded toy maybe. But I put them on anyway, and after a discussion with my family, it was agreed that they didn't look any good because they didn't complement the model. And I mentioned at the time that I wished I had created my own decals whereby you could see the colour of the model through the clear background. And I was regretting buying these stickers. I bought them a long time ago in preparation for this model, and after I put them on, I kind of felt a little bit disillusioned because everything was going well up until now, and I was not happy. I was not happy with that, so I ended up making some more. Unfortunately, I printed them on the wrong side of the decal paper, so I had to print them again. I didn't want the ink to bleed unnecessarily from the back, because you have to seal them with some spray-on varnish, clear varnish. So I made some extra ones, and I sprayed them with spray-on varnish, and they separated nicely from the backing paper, and they looked amazing. And I'm so pleased that I took the time to remove the stickers, and that wasn't easy. They stuck pretty hard, I can tell you now, and it took me ages to peel them off. And I was terrified I was going to wreck the paint after all my hard work, but thankfully it came good at the end, and I'm so pleased that I took the option of changing the decals when I did, because otherwise you'd be looking at a completely different model and you'd be commenting about how it looked rubbish, I'm thinking. But these clear background decals are definitely the way to go. And if you want some, by the way, if you're going to make this, if you're going to do this model yourself, if you're a hobbyist and you fancy the challenge, you can shoot me an email. The email's in the description of the video, and I will gladly send you some of these decals that I've made for free, no matter where you are in the world. So here's a reminder of what we started with, a very sad looking model. And obviously been really well played with. I say that a lot, but these cars were definitely played with in the day by people who are now possibly dead, possibly in a nursing home, possibly your grandfather. And if you show him this video, he might say, I had one of those. So they've been around for a long time, and they were very well made, and that's the reason why. So this is what it looks like now. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed, it's been extremely frustrating, this model, I must admit, but I've enjoyed doing it to the fact that I can now say it's done. And I think you'll agree it looks absolutely amazing compared to what it did look like. And this is going into my cupboard on display with all my other models. And I've taken the liberty of touching up the rivet pins and the headlights and that with some high gloss chrome paint, and I think it makes the whole thing look brand new, just been bought for some child back in 1969 for Christmas. How pleased would he be in opening this up and seeing this magnificent model and knowing that it will still be around 50 years later. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers, and if you have, please like, subscribe and share with your friends and word them up. If they're into Matchbox, tell them to have a look at my channel, and I hope they enjoy it. So this is Marty from Marty's Matchbox Makeovers saying until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.